Hello and welcome to Touchline from Casper, and Mark Cameron. Hello, Mark.
Gus, nice being back.
Yeah, definitely.
Very excited about tonight's guest. It's a legend of South African rugby.
An absolute legend. Yes. We're so privileged to welcome Stefan de Blanche in the studio with us tonight. Stefan, welcome and thank you very much for being here. Stefan, to start off with, tell us about Stefan de Blanche. Where did it all start? How did it come about you playing provincial rugby and Springbok rugby?
I really enjoyed school, but I don't think so much for the academic side of it, more for the school side. And I absolutely loved my time growing up in the small little town of Swellendam. And as I said, had to do all sports, from tug of war to tennis to cricket to athletics to, and then of course to the main sport in the winter. Well, in fact, the only sport with a little bit of cross country for the boys in Swellendam was rugby, which was the heart and soul of the little town. Every Saturday was a great day playing against the neighbouring towns. It was a derby every weekend, played early in the mornings as a youngster, playing the frost off the field, snow on the mountains, the beautiful Langeberg Mountains, and then, watch the under-13s play, then watch the high school play, carry the sand for them. In those days, they still used sand to kick. And then from there, you rushed across to the town's rugby field where the town played their three teams in the afternoon. So Saturdays was only for one thing in my book, and that was for rugby all day.
So, Stefan, you were talking about, obviously, and I think a lot of smaller schools today are still like that, where you have to play multiple sports. So other than rugby, what was the other sports that you played, and what did you excel in?
For us, we had to do sport because I wanted to. But I mean, in primary school, I played all summer sports. It was from tennis to cricket to athletics. Those were the main summer sports. We didn't have swimming at school. We only had one gala a year, but only the good swimmers. I wasn't a great swimmer.
That's why you only had one gala.
Exactly, yeah, that's it. That was enough for me. So yeah, in summer it was all those sports, but then in high school, I wouldn't say I specialized, but athletics was my sport in the summer. And then winter it was rugby. So that was the two choices, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I feel sad these days for the boys and even for girls specializing in sports so early. I think they leave a lot out there in terms of their natural development.
Yes.
I would strongly suggest, and research have shown, if you look at the top sportsmen in the world, the Americans have done a lot of research on it, and I'm not referring to the Americans. The only reason I do that is because they've done so much research on it. They obviously have the time and the resources to do that. Is that, the guys at the top of their game right now as professionals, if you look at them, they played a multiple of sports across all spectrums when they were at school. And that helps with, the development from motor, all of that, the whole important part of growing up and letting your body develop naturally. So, I do understand, and I do see where, especially rugby coaches come from these days, and they almost practice rugby in December already to play in March the next year, taking on almost a fully professional approach to the sport. But I do think that the kids, they don't benefit from it. And to be fair, by the time they get to university, they're tired of rugby. They've played so hard, they've played so much, they've been treated like professionals. So it is a concern, but I also believe that if you look at the size, if you look at the ability of these boys, the amount of time they spend in the gym, as a school, if you don't prepare like that, it's hard to compete at the very top level.
Hey, guys, I just want to ask one question on this. So you obviously spoke about athletics and whatever, and you know, rugby is a unique sport where all shapes and sizes can obviously play the sport. Whereas other sport, it's more I won't say the skill set, but your body obviously depicts as to what you can do and can't do. So just on that, if you go back to a youngster, whether it's a young girl or a young boy developing, because we're fortunate enough to have ladies playing rugby worldwide now as well. Obviously, one can pick out certain sports that will complement rugby specific. But let's go to your position that you played on the wing, and that more often than not. Athletics in your specific position, obviously, I'm assuming, played a massive role in your success at the end of the day.
Incredible. I think it formed a very good base and a very good understanding of fitness, hard work, and just for that. But, you know, yeah, explosive power, speed, endurance, every single bit that you need as a good rugby player, you will find in athletics. You know, there's also the technique of running so that you do so without getting injuries. I was very fortunate in my career that injuries or serious injuries stayed away. I do believe it's a way you prepare yourself, but I also do believe that it's a base that you got growing up as a kid. And athletics, without a doubt, laid a very, very good foundation. It's sad to see, and especially in KZN, that athletics at school is not a big sport. You know, my daughter, she loves running, but she goes to a club to train. There's no athletics at school. She goes to an all-girls school, and she needs to go to a club to do athletics. So I think if you look at the provinces, we always talk about KZN, our rugby, and if you look at the real strong provinces, if you go up north to Gauteng, and then if you move down to the Western Cape again, those schools all have strong athletics. There's a strong athletic culture there that they do in summer and again at the end of the year, and without a doubt, that certainly helped their boys prepare them well for the rugby season.
Stefan, more often than not, you hear top rugby players tell you that they've had multiple sports disciplines at school. They participated in cricket and hockey and tennis and athletics. And then very late in their school career, or even after school at varsity, they only choose to specialize in rugby. Do you really think that we're lacking in that now, and that our current schoolboys will find it difficult to go to the highest level if they're not exposed to multiple sports?
I don't think they will find it difficult at school level, but after school, without a doubt, that base and that enjoyment that we got playing rugby at school level, and I grew up in a totally different era to now. I finished school in 1993, so you know we work hard on the rugby field, practice and training, but not even close to what these boys are, you know, exposed to now and the way they train. So, without a doubt, I do believe that they will battle later on. But I think the main thing that we see, and if you look at the dropout from firstly under 13 Craven Week, for those boys playing Craven Week again in high school, I think there's only like 22% of them will play Craven Week in high school. So obviously there's a lot of psychological and a lot of physical change that happens from the ages of 12 to 17, 18. That's one reason for it, and that there's nothing you can do about that. But then again, the boys who play Craven Week and that goes on to play provincial and international rugby again, there's a massive, you know, I've had plenty of examples like that of unbelievable talent when I was playing at school, schoolboys around me from the big schools like Oakdale, Outeniqua. But very few, if any of those players who were stars in my Craven Week team featured on later in life, other than myself. So that shows you the drop off I always used it as an example. So yeah, I do believe that they will fall behind and for not doing multiple sports without a doubt. But also I think that burnout when they get to university is a real thing.
Stefan, can I then just ask, while we're talking about schoolboy, and we cover schoolboy rugby quite extensively at times, you know, if you look, and we're going to do the Wilderklawe and all those a little bit later, but if you look at your top schools in South Africa, Those players, although they're at school, are basically like professional players already, and that's how they're being molded. And that there are thousands of spectators, 15,000 at times, that go and watch specific schools play against each other. And then after school, when they go into the under-20s, and it's countrywide where we have a lack in under-20s coming through the school system to play club rugby. Do you think part of that, because they're getting pushed so hard at school and to participate at a specific level, and there's early morning, 5, 6 o'clock, they at school already training, they train till 5, 6 o'clock at night, and then they participate, and there's thousands of crowds, and then all of a sudden, when they go to a club level now, you only have 300 or 400 people watching the games, and then the kids think, well, this is not for them.
Absolutely, and you involved in club rugby, and you can tell the story yourself. Think about it as a school kid, and this is how it goes, because this is what happens. So at the age of 11 or 12, you get scouted by a high school. They're willing and prepared to pay your full school fees. And remember, some of these school fees are private school fees. They are, if you look at some of the private schools in South Africa, 300,000 Rand just for the school fees and boarding. So they're willing to pay that for you. That's an investment of 2 million straight away into the kid. So he's treated like a hero. So from the age of 11, 12, he's already got an understanding that he's got some talent, but also now realistically, he's getting paid for his services to go to a high school, because they invest that amount of money in you, but they also want you to perform. You're the star, they want you to perform. So that pressure, first of all, on that kid, he's got no idea how to handle it, and that's no fault of his own. So then he goes through his school. Yes, he plays well. He plays for the first team, maybe makes a Craven Week team. And again, after school, there are now literally hundreds of schools across South Africa where you now have to compete, where everybody's got talent. You go to university. If you don't get a contract straight out of school, a lot of these kids obviously looking for contracts straight out of school. And if they don't get a contract, they've got absolutely no interest to go to a club, to go and play practice on a Tuesday and Thursday night, pay your own way there, go on a bus on a Saturday, travel up to Impangeni or Richards Bay, go play rugby where there's 500 people watching. I mean, that's amateur rugby, and those were the best days of my rugby career, playing for the Teachers College of Wellington and Boland for absolutely no pay other than a few beers afterwards with your mates, and that's it. But unfortunately, the professional game and bursaries and scholarships and recruitment, that's taken away a little bit of that amateur, that's instilled in rugby. Rugby should not really be a professional game because it's got so many good values. But unfortunately, and don't get me wrong, there are great things about professional sport, but you need a proper and a real structure to make that work, that you don't lose those guys who will never play professional rugby, but they got a scholarship when they were the age of 11 or 12, and now when they get to matric, they think they're going to play professional rugby. They're never going to. That is the reality. Yes. And you lose those guys, and you want those guys to come to club rugby and have longevity in the sport, play club rugby for 10 or 15 years, pass the fines meeting on to the next generation coming through, and that's how you build a culture of rugby, and that's how you keep it. Unfortunately, I think professionalism has taken some of that wonderful rugby camaraderie away.
No, for sure.
Stefan, on a lighter note, rapid fire questions quickly.
Good luck.
What was your first car?
Toyota Corolla 1100.
What do you drive currently?
Isuzu.
Hey, well done. Love that car.
I'm a Dutchie. I'm a Dutchie. Not
cool.
fast.
That makes two of us. Pizza or pasta?
Pasta.
What food do you absolutely hate on your plate?
Jeez, I was brought up by Afrikaans mum. We were made to eat everything. Otherwise, you get a cup and a second helping of food. But I'll have to probably say tripe. One of my friend's dad was preparing tripe or afal in the house when I was like 11 years old. I went to visit that stink in the house. I can still smell to this day. So I would say tripe definitely.
Best holiday destination?
Transkei, on the east coast of Africa.
Yeah, I was hoping you say Toti.
That's East Coast.
I'm scared to come to Toti. I'm scared,
No, you're scared leaving.
Dream job when you were little.
Marine biologist.
Hey, well done. Moment you regret the most on the rugby field?
Geez, moment I regret the most. That is a difficult one. There are many. Geez, that is a difficult one. Moment I regret. To be honest, I don't regret really anything. There were some moments that's harder to swallow. Obviously, lose in the last minute or drop a ball with an open try line.
Yeah.
But the funny one that I do regret is because Nick Mallett was my coach at Boerland, and I was playing on the wing. And a couple of weeks back, he chased me out of the stadium and said, you'll never select me for any of his teams if I don't learn how to tackle. So I got back there, learn how to tackle, and then about 2 months later, it was an injury, and he selected me again. We were playing against the old Western Transvaal, and the wind was howling in the Wellington Stadium. It was an open stadium, and I remember as a wing, Eugene Hare was still playing scrum half for them, and he kicked the ball over my head, and I saw it go out. It was over my head, almost into the stands, but the wind blew it back into the field. So I turned around, and looking at the stands and walking back, and the next thing, the ball landed next to me in the playoff field. So I could hear Nick Mallett swearing and shouting at me from the stand. As an Afrikaans boy, some of the words I didn't quite understand, but I knew that they weren't complimentary. So I regret not watching. And that's one thing I learned that day. I'll watch till the end of my career, every single ball, till someone catches it in the stands or till it lands. I'll watch that ball like a hawk.
Favorite book?
Shantaram. David Goggins wrote a very good one as well. You Can't Break Me. So, yeah, I would say Shantaram.
Career highlight?
Obviously making your debut for the Springboks and winning 2 Currie Cups with the Sharks, playing overseas. We won the Magnus League. It was called then. It's now the Pro 14. We won that twice with the Ospreys. So those were great moments. But playing in a World Cup, the 99 World Cup, I know we lost in the semi-finals to Australia when Stephen Larkin got the drop goal, but we then went on to beat New Zealand in the 3rd and 4th place playoff. So playing in that World Cup was amazing. It was a great experience. We were based in my favorite country in the world, Scotland as well. So it was just a magic 6 weeks for me at the World Cup.
Thank you.
Oh, no, I was going to ask him as well, favorite moment. So,
moment,
most guys speak about your first test cap or your first, so I think on that, can we ask a favorite moment maybe with the rugby legends, Stefan? Because obviously you had massive boots that you had there, and when you vacated that, whoever has to lead them now has massive boots to fill. So what was your favorite moments, and maybe your not so favorite moments at the Rugby Legends?
Yeah, I think that's a very special Rugby Legends Association, a very special club, and it's certainly not exclusive. People always say, but how can you be so arrogant as to call yourself legends? And I said, it's not because of what we did on the field. It's what the guys are doing off the field now, giving up their own time, not getting paid for anything, just because they love the game so much and want people to experience the same fun, the same enjoyment we had out of the game. So teaching young kids how to play rugby, or going to a feeding scheme, or helping people who are less fortunate, or having a rugby development program. So those are all highlights that people don't often see. Because trust me, rugby development is not a flashy and not a fanfare, and it's hard work. You got to find those rough diamonds in the outlying areas and bring them and get them to enjoy rugby. Things we take for granted. If you go to schools in rural areas, even in and around cities, in Umlazi, you talk about Khayelitsha and Tembisa in the East Rand, those places, things we take for granted, like a rugby playing field. We arrive on a Saturday and there's a piece of grass we can play on, it's chalk lines on it, and we go. Those kids don't have the facilities, rugby boots, transport to get to the field, some water or something to eat after the game. So those things are that we take for granted. And I do believe that we can do more with regards to development in this country. Certainly, we need more help from the government. But to see those kids play rugby and to see them grow and to see some of them play, in varsity cups or making it to provincial teams or even into the 7 setup with Marius Skuman and Neil Powell, those are great moments. All highlights.
Stefan, those development camps that you guys host, do you follow up after that? You were talking about Tembisa or out here in the rural areas. Do you follow up on those specific areas? Do you go back there to do a second or a third? Do you bring the same kids back, or do you identify kids in the first run?
And that's a great question. So there are areas, or there are certain times which we will only go there once, but that's not the main purpose of SA Rugby Legends. So SA Rugby Legends got a development program in South Africa. When COVID happened, 30,000 boys and girls in the creative structure called VUCA Rugby. Out of that, we selected the best provincial teams, all 14 provinces, and from there they go to an Akawi week. From the Akawi week, then they go on to play in the Grand Coma week. So there's a real pathway for the development of young players, and we do follow up. A lot of those players will fall away. A lot of those players you'll never see again. But at the moment, 20 of those players playing varsity cup. So there is a real pathway for these kids who only started playing rugby at the age of 14, 15 to follow and to get better and to have an opportunity to play rugby. The beauty about VUCA Rugby and then Ikawi week is it is a real development, but also a lot of those boys get opportunities to go to your traditional rugby playing schools like a Grey College or DHS or even like a private school like Hilton or Michaelhouse. They get opportunities to go to those schools through rugby, and then if they never play rugby again, that's also fine, but they got a great education.
Yes.
They made some mates, they made a connection, and they hopefully set up for life.
So, Stefan, if we can just stop there for a second, and I think you brought something very important in, more so for youngsters that's watching us tonight, is the fact that you're coupling education, and not only to rugby but any sport. Many of the youngsters coming through sport at schools now, as we spoke earlier, some of them think they've made it already. Some get contracted to a union early. I've been privileged myself to coach club rugby for many a year, where we have these young contracted players coming in, and we were all young at one stage. So I'm a club coach. Stefan ter Blanche is a young 19-year-old that has just been contracted to the Sharks. When you get to the club, I actually don't matter, because you don't really want to listen to me, because I'm only a club coach, yet you are a provincial and a 19 youngster that has come through. Those youngsters only want to play rugby. So as a club coach, we're trying to bring them in to say, right, come and play rugby and try and get an education, because tomorrow your rugby career stops and you don't have anything. Through all your experience and whatever you do for rugby, I'm sure you guys try and install this as well, but how important is that not to make sure that the rest of your life is set outside of sport?
That is so important. It's so hard as a youngster, because we were all young many years ago, so we all thought that you could do everything. And to remind me of that daily is I've got my own 3 kids now, so they're also young, so they also keep me on my toes. And it's so important that kids, even guys who's got a good schooling career behind him from traditional rugby playing schools, even a lot of those boys, all they want to do is play rugby. And we know, as you know, is that not a lot of guys, if you look at the big numbers, and especially the good schoolboy rugby players we have in this country, and not a lot of the players will make it into provincial rugby. And certainly, even if you do, you will certainly not earn enough money to relax and to retire by the time you finish playing rugby, if you're lucky at the age of 35. So important. It's so important for the guys to get an education. I just think about my time. Sort of when I finished school, we went to study. That was the thing, and then we played rugby for fun. Yeah, and then obviously changed a bit, and rugby became professional. So I was very fortunate to play in the amateur era, and then also the transition from amateur to professional, and then went fully professional. So it's vitally important. If you look at the guys who are really successful after rugby, you'll see that they had a good education behind them, but they also studied after school. And it's just, it is hard. but it's so important. We can't emphasize that enough.
I also think with the Varsity Cup and the Varsity Shield that has come in now, I mean, that speaks exactly to what we're saying from a rugby point of view, but they're even doing netball and all of that now. So they are coupling study. You have to study to play. And I mean, the Varsity Cup is now an elite sport, a structure in South African rugby. And I think something like that through Duitse Bosman and Francois Pienaar was involved in that to get this going, I think was actually a good brainchild for rugby. And now, as I said, the netball spheres and that to study something.
We spoke about kids having multiple sporting disciplines at school and participating in that. But if you look at most of your sportsmen that makes it in the big league, they've all got some kind of education behind them. I mean, there's a lot of the players that's currently playing that are qualified doctors and lawyers and they've all got careers and businessmen, successful businessmen. So most of the guys that make it in the big league,
top flight.
if you can, top flight, are guys that's making it in life in general. And I think once the school kids realize that is the actual fact, and rugby is not the be all and end all, it's just a means to an end, actually. They will do much better.
Especially rugby, I think. Rugby is it's a contact sport, obviously, and I mean, your injury could end your career tomorrow.
100%.
Whereas, and I'm not saying all sport, but the other sport, you probably get a longer life, like cricket, for argument's sake. I mean, yes, there's certain injuries that halt your career, but I mean, you can play cricket until how old? Only a few players can play professional rugby to the age of 36, 38 or whatever. It's only the few that, and
ask Johan Ackerman, he's got the key.
I mean, Victor Matfield was quite old when he played and that, and then you look at guys like, sorry Stefan, I'm putting you on the spot here, but you look at guys like Stefan. I mean, if you follow this guy on social media, he's forever training. So I think if we had to speak to Sean Everett now, and you had to test with the Shark team, I'm sure you'll be right up there from a fitness point of view as well. And I mean, that's what it's about. You need to keep pushing yourself, and it's a lot of pressure. But it's just like that when it can happen, and then that's the end of your career, and you have to fall back on something.
I just want to officially say it now, Stefan, that I've deleted your profile off my Facebook page, because you really make me so tired when I watch you. I promise you, I can't.
You're one of those guys that unfollow me, so I'm not happy about that.
But he unfollows you because you make him tired watching you train.
You make me feel guilty. Moving on to rugby and rugby scores, some schoolboy rugby. We had the Wildeklawe, ABSA Wildeklawe series, as well as the Selborne Jubilee. Just two of the big tournaments that happened about 2 weeks ago. I think the Wildeklawe was a mini Craven Week with some of the big schools playing there and some brilliant schoolboy rugby. Stefan, I don't know if you watched some of those games.
Yeah, I was fortunate to watch on the Monday. I think it was a public holiday in South Africa. Workers' Day, in fact, on the 1st of May.
Yes.
And I got to watch. I was like, okay, this is now the last game I'm going to watch, and then the next game, Casper take on Paul Ruiz. That's how I'm going, and the next game is like DHS play Oakdale. Oh no, I'm going to watch this one again. And so I ended up watching all of that rugby, and it was just absolutely what we've been talking about earlier. The talent on display on that in that tournament, and just on that day alone is like unbelievable. We should really never lose a World Cup ever again with the amount of talent we have, natural talent we have. Look, managing them and making sure that they get the right pathway and that they last is important, and that's a very, very hard job. And if you don't believe me, just look at the players that we have in this country, first of all, and you look at South Africans playing overseas, still eligible for South Africa. But look at all the other teams across the world where South African players are playing.
Yes, sure.
And you'll be absolutely amazed that there's 300 plus players overseas who could quite easily play in a South African domestic competition if we had firstly the financial needs to it and the number of teams to host them. So we are blessed in this country with schoolboy rugby unbelievable.
For sure. I'm always laugh because when we watch overseas rugby, so there's obviously, like we've got certain teams that we follow, but when it's a team that I don't follow, my sons always ask me, Dad, or my little girl asks me, Dad, which team are you supporting today? And I look and I say, no, that one. Why that one? That's got the most South Africans in, so I'm supporting that team. So it is like a Stefan. And then just to go back to your childhood and compared to the bigger schools and that now, and even Craven Week and so forth. If you look at the development of players, the size of these boys nowadays compared to yesterday, how do you even start comprehending as to how things have changed over the years? Obviously, I think way back when there wasn't as much gym activity as it is now, but I mean the boys today are actually men that are playing under 18 rugby.
No, you're absolutely right. And I look at schoolboy rugby, and I've got a son at high school now, even though he plays hockey. But as a boarder at school, he must stay there till the first rugby team finish their game. So every Saturday we watch schoolboy rugby, and what a fun day it is out, especially after COVID for the last 2 years. A lot of those games, most of those games didn't take place. So for us to be out on the rugby pitch, it feels like Saturday again. It feels like weekend when you get to watch schoolboy rugby. I can't, and I often said to my friends watching the game with me, I said, I'm delighted, I'm so happy that I don't have to tackle those boys in the only school. Sure. I can't believe the size. Look, in our days, we had some big boys as well, but they were big, but they were still kids. These days, if you look at the boys playing rugby, and they look like men, they got. You can see they spend time in the gym. You can see they've been professionally prepared for the game. They got shoulders, they got legs. They big, but they also look like big men, which is a big difference from the days the way we played. Yeah. Interesting fact is that when we got back to play international rugby, I think it was 1994, 93, Donnie Gerber and that team. Donnie Gerber, Peter Miller, they were playing centre, James Small on the wing. Man for man, that team was a centimetre or two taller than our SA Schools team from 3 years ago. But the SA Schoolboys team were heavier than the Springboks team of 1994. So that just shows you how the game has moved on.
No, for sure.
Talking about schoolboy rugby now, just interesting stat. I don't know if you watched the game between Hilton and Michaelhouse on the 30th of April. The 150th time that those two teams played against one another, and Hilton walking away 32-17.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, it was an outstanding day. 14,000 people at the day. I wasn't there on the day, but I got lots of friends. My son was playing. He's in another school, but a lot of my friends were there. Absolutely unbelievable to see. And so good to see those derby days back. Hilton, of course, a big year for them this year. They're 150 years old, coached by Brad McLeod Henderson. Yeah. He coached the Sharks to Currie Cup glory before. He's the head coach there. Greg Miller, SA Schools rugby player and SA Schools cricketer from Grey High. He's the director of rugby. So just in those two names, you can see what schools, the IP, and the type of people they bring in to coach their schoolboys at that level. So, Brad, the Currie Cup coach, he's won a Currie Cup before. He's now coaching a schools team. Greg Miller got all that experience, and he's the director of rugby. So, yeah, it was a wonderful day. Hilton, 150 years old. Wonderful school, magnificent school in the Natal Midlands.
And part of the reason why Greg always does so well, because he's still like a kid himself. No, he does. He's a handful. Look at that face. Stefan will tell you.
Look at that face.
I know.
Then Varsity Cup, if we can just go back to the Varsity Cup final. We haven't spoken about the Varsity Cup final again. Marty's against Tuckies. Mark, you and I had a couple of conversations about this before. Tuckies going down to Stellenbosch, beating Marty's 29-23. Stefan, I don't know if you had a squiz at that one.
I'm sure you would have.
That's another one. That's another one I told my wife I had to watch. So.
I think you got the same problem as we have.
Yeah.
Luckily, we've got a TV downstairs that I'm allowed to watch with the remote every now and then.
But also a good game.
Yeah, another great game. Wonderful crowd. at the game at Downey Craven Stadium in Stellenbosch, and two other powerhouses in certainly universities in South Africa. Marties need no introduction to the number of Springboks they produce and their heritage and the and the history they've got there, and then Tuks with the players that's come through them as well from from Nas Bota's era, Bernard Klaas, and even before that. Great addition, but a great result for them. A lot of talk, obviously, about Egan Seconds, the TMO make a call right at the end, and that's why I said I'm so. There's one thing that I don't want to do in life, and that's be either a referee or a TMO, because it's the most thankless job in the world, and you can never get it right. But if you take that incident or take that, however you want to see it, away, a great game of rugby, and just two massive teams going head to head.
So if you can just recall going back a week prior to that in the Varsity Shield, so what I want to say is both games, both finals were basically won nearly either in the last minute or just into injury time. Isn't that important, especially finals? I mean, finals, you want the final to be close. Not as a coach, obviously. You want your team to win and get that pressure off you. But from a spectator point of view, it's nice to sit, especially if you're neutral, to see the fight until the end. And both teams, the final in the Varsity Shield and the final in the Varsity Cup was basically played right until the end. And I mean, if you think about it, Marties were leading until they missed tackles happened a little bit, and Bob was your uncle right at the end, and you're talking about TMO decisions and that, Stefan. If you go back to the Varsity Shield, they were into injury time already, and you talk about pressure from a referee to have to give a penalty try right there for that team to actually go on and win, which was obviously fought there. I mean, you are right. I would never be a referee as well. There is immense pressure on these guys.
I don't want to be one of them. Really don't want to.
But it was great. It's great for South African rugby, and a massive concept that was born a few years ago, and may that continue for a long time.
Before we go into club rugby, somebody made a statement about the schoolboy rugby that was over the Easter weekend, and now we've seen the Wilde Clavers and Selborne, and you see these big schools clashing, you see the boys there, and you think about the Varsity Cup and the Varsity Shield, and then the question pops out, why is our franchises battling to get players? Why are they battling, and why are they buying players in if we have all of this talent sitting here at the bottom? Stefan?
Just repeat that for me again. You just broke up there slightly. Sorry.
I was just talking about the Easter weekend, all those festivals over the Easter weekend, and the schoolboy rugby, and then also the Varsity Cup and the Varsity Shield, and you look at all the talent that we've got there, and then it seems like some of our franchises are struggling to get players and to get good players to be competitive. And you think about those players. Now, the question was asked, why are we battling at franchise level if we've got all of this talent sitting around?
Yeah, I think, again, after school, what happens after school, if you look at the Varsity Cup, interesting thing about Varsity Cup is that a lot of those players that are coming through Varsity Cup, as we would like to call it, coming through Varsity Cup, they are already contracted to unions. So a lot of the guys, like with Tuks and Marties, a lot of those players who came through or played for them in the final, they already got a contract with certain unions, whether it's Western Province or the Blue Bulls, for instance, because those two universities are based in Pretoria, and the other one, Stellenbosch, obviously falling under Western Province. So again, it's finding the right talent, bringing them through. There shouldn't be a problem. If you look at and I assume that are you talking about current franchises, or you're talking about the URC teams struggling to get players?
I'm talking about both of them. If you look at URC, yes, URC, we've got some good teams, and our teams seem to be doing very well against the Northern Hemisphere sides now in the second half of the URC. Yeah. But if you now go back to our Currie Cup, it seems like our Currie Cup franchises are not doing as well. If you look at the URC franchises versus the Currie Cup teams, call the Sharks URC side doing much better than the Currie Cup side, and so the Lions as well. If you look at the Lions URC side versus the Currie Cup side, it just seems to have such a big gap from the one to the other. And you look at all the talent that we've got in Varsity Cup, it's almost, I don't know, it's difficult to comprehend why we're battling at that level.
I think, if I can come in here, I think part of that is obviously the URC is a new competition for us. I think we only really in the latter part of this competition started finding our feet. And if you can go back a year or two ago, we said that you weren't going to contract as many players, and then the URC obviously kicked off, and I think all your season campaigners should be playing in that, because your youngsters coming through now should go through the Currie Cup to get there.
Yes.
That's my take on it. And next year it's going to be even worse now that we've qualified for the Championship Cup, because we're going to play in another competition now with Western Province, the Bulls and the Sharks qualifying for that, being in the top 8 of the URC. So I think that in itself is going to cause a problem for us next year and going on. But I think part of my take is that many of our players here don't only get contracted by South African franchises. Yeah. These guys get scouted as youngsters in schools already when they leave Craven Week. Some don't even make Craven Week, and they get poached by overseas companies or franchises. And I think that's part of the problem. I think we are a breeding ground for world rugby. And where's the money? Unfortunately, it's not here. It's in Europe, and that's what happens.
Yeah, I think it's a very valid point, and you do. I do believe that some of the guys playing in Varsity Cup, I think a lot of them play Varsity Cup, and that will probably be the last and the most competitive rugby that 100%. They play. They've made the choice that they're going to play Varsity Cup rugby, but after Varsity, they're going into the corporate world. They're going to find their feet.
Definitely.
And they're going to play. We do lose a lot of players going overseas, and I don't think it's a fair playing field. If you look at let's go Bulls, Sharks, and Western Province. Those are probably your 3 big franchises. Lions to a lesser degree at this stage, and they will contract a lot of players. So there could be guys in the Bulls setup or the Sharks setup who's quite easily play for the Lions, quite easy play for the Cheetahs or Griquas or the Pumas, but they're contracted by the Sharks. The Sharks, for instance, will have 60 contracted or 80 contracted players, whatever that number is. Please don't quote me as I don't have the right number, but they'll rather take their chances with the Sharks and be involved in a so-called bigger franchise and go and play Currie Cup rugby, where then have an opportunity for whether it's for the Cheetahs or for the Griquas or for the Pumas.
Definitely.
Yeah. Stefan, thank you very much. We unfortunately ran out of time. There's still a lot that we wanted to discuss.
We'll have to get you back, right?
No, we definitely have to get you back, to carry on with this conversation. But thank you very much. We really appreciate your time and your input. Always brilliant to listen to what you guys have to say.
Thank you very much, Guy. I really enjoyed that, and sorry that I talk too much. We'll have to.
No.
We'll have to target club rugby soon. So hopefully,
we were going to talk about club rugby, but then you and Gus spoke too much.
No, definitely not.
Totally lost this weekend, so I thought you Oaks don't want to talk about club rugby this weekend.
We tried to avoid it as much as we possibly could.
We wanted to ask you a few questions on that, but luckily you spoke a lot. So.
No, it's brilliant.
So, no, thanks, Stefan. Really appreciate it, and we'll definitely have you back. And I mean, you are a club rugby follower yourself, so we'll definitely press on your button to have you back in studio. Yes. And as I said, maybe we'll sit in that lovely study of yours, and you can take us through your jerseys and that to tell us where they are, because I can just imagine there's lots of history in that specific room.
Anytime, guys, you're always welcome.
Thank you, Stefan. Really appreciate it.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you. Too. Thanks, Abe.
To all our listeners, from myself, Casper Els and Mark Cameron, have a great rugby week.
Goodbye.